Frank Miller squinted at the horizon, watching as the sun began to set behind the Montana mountains. The view never got old, even after leading wilderness survival classes here for the past 5 years. After 20 years in Marine Force recon, the peaceful wilderness was exactly what he needed. "All right, everyone, let's finish setting up camp before it gets dark," Frank called to the 6 students spread around the small clearing. They were 3 days into a 7-day survival course, and his students were finally getting the hang of things. Lisa Jennings, a college student from Oregon, approached with an armful of firewood. "Mr. Miller, is it normal for satellites to move that fast?" Frank looked up. A bright light streaked across the sky, followed by another, then several more. "Too bright for shooting stars, moving too erratically for satellites. That's not normal," he said quietly, feeling a familiar tension in his shoulders. His instincts, honed from years in combat zones, were screaming that something was wrong. More lights appeared in the darkening sky. Dozens, then hundreds. "Get the radio," Frank ordered. One of his students, Ryan Cooper, rushed to the equipment tent. Frank kept his eyes on the sky, counting the objects. They were moving in formation now, slowing as they entered the atmosphere. "Radio's not working," Ryan called. "Just static on all frequencies." Frank nodded. "Cell phones?" Lisa checked hers. No signal at all. The objects in the sky stopped moving, hovering at different altitudes. Frank pulled out his binoculars and focused on the closest one. It was metallic with strange angles and pulsing lights that didn't match any aircraft he'd ever seen. "Everyone gather your essential gear," he said, calmly, though his mind was racing through possibilities. "We need to move to higher ground." As they packed, a much larger shape appeared in the sky, dwarfing the others. Even from this distance, Frank could tell it was massive, easily several miles long. "Mr. Miller?" Lisa's voice trembled. Are those spaceships?" Frank didn't answer immediately. After 20 years in the military, he'd seen almost everything, but nothing like this. "I don't know," he admitted, "but we're going to stay calm and focused. That's how we survive." They hiked uphill for an hour, reaching a ridge that offered a better view of the valley. The objects were still there, hanging in the sky. Some had descended closer to the ground. Frank counted at least 30 visible from their position. "What's the plan?" Ryan asked. Frank studied the valley through his binoculars. "First we observe. Then we make decisions based on what we know." The radio in Ryan's pack suddenly crackled to life, making everyone jump. A voice spoke through waves of static. "Attention, citizens of Earth. This is Admiral Zarkesh of the Tarkarian Expeditionary Fleet. Your primitive civilization is now under our authority. Resistance is—" The transmission cut out, returning to static. The students looked at Frank with wide eyes. "Did that just say citizens of Earth?" Lisa whispered. Frank nodded grimly. "Looks like we have visitors." As night fell completely, they saw flashes of light in the distance, near where the nearest town would be. Frank made a decision. "We need to stay hidden until we understand what we're dealing with," he said. "Tomorrow I'll scout ahead alone." But tomorrow came sooner than expected. Shortly after midnight, a bright light appeared in the sky directly above them. Frank woke everyone and led them into a dense grove of trees. Just as the light intensified, a craft about the size of a bus descended into the clearing they had just left. It hovered silently before landing on 3 extended legs. After a moment, a section of the craft slid open, and figures emerged. Frank observed through his night vision scope. The figures were tall, at least 7 feet, with broad shoulders, and movements that seemed slightly off, as if Earth's gravity was too strong for them. They wore fitted armor that gleamed even in the dim light. "Aliens," Ryan whispered. "Actual aliens." Frank counted 6 of them. They moved with military precision, securing the area around their craft. Their heads swiveled strangely, suggesting different visual capabilities than humans. One of them spoke, the sound carrying in the night air. The language was unlike anything Frank had ever heard, clicking and rumbling tones that no human throat could make. The aliens began setting up equipment around the clearing, installing devices that burrowed into the ground. Frank took careful, mental notes of everything, their movements, equipment, apparent hierarchies, force of habit from years of recon missions. Then things went wrong. Two of Frank's students, brothers Alan and Peter Wilson, had moved slightly away from the group to get a different vantage point. A branch snapped under Alan's foot, the sound like a gunshot in the quiet forest. The aliens reacted instantly. Three of them moved with surprising speed toward the sound, weapons raised. Frank signaled for everyone to stay absolutely still, but it was too late. The aliens had some kind of thermal imaging. They headed directly toward the brothers' position. Within seconds, the aliens had captured Alan and Peter. The brothers didn't resist as the tall creatures bound their hands with glowing restraints and marched them back to the clearing. Frank watched as the aliens examined the two humans with clinical interest. They took samples: blood, hair, skin scrapings. The brothers were terrified but unharmed, so far. Then one of the aliens, wearing more elaborate armor than the others, said something that made the others laugh. A harsh sound like grinding metal. He drew a blade from his belt, a curved weapon that gleamed in the moonlight. Frank had seen enough. These weren't scientists studying new life forms. This was an invasion force, and they clearly didn't value human life. He turned to his remaining students. I need to help them. All of you stay here no matter what happens. If I don't come back, wait until daylight, then head north to the ranger station. It's about 15 miles. Lisa gripped his arm. What are you going to do? There are 6 of them, and they have weapons we've never seen before. Frank checked his hunting knife and the small pack of supplies on his belt. I'm going to even the odds. Moving silently through the forest, Frank circled the clearing. He had survived 3 tours in Afghanistan and 2 in Syria by understanding one simple principle. Superior technology doesn't matter if you never see the attack coming. The aliens had positioned one guard near their ship while the others continued setting up equipment. The one with the blade was still examining the human captives. Frank studied their movements, noting how they struggled slightly with Earth's gravity. Their armor covered most of their bodies but left joints exposed, probably for mobility. Most importantly, they were overconfident, not expecting any threat. That would be their mistake. Frank picked up a rock and threw it far to the left of his position. When one of the aliens moved to investigate, Frank made his move. The alien never saw him coming. Frank's knife found the gap in the armor at the back of the neck. The creature collapsed without a sound. Frank dragged it into the underbrush, then took its weapon, a pistol-like device with unfamiliar controls. 1 down, 5 to go. Frank knew he couldn't win in a direct fight. But he didn't need to win. He just needed to create enough chaos to free the brothers and escape. As he prepared for his next move, he didn't realize that this night would change not just his life, but the fate of the entire human race. Frank moved through the shadows like a ghost. 20 years in Force Recon had taught him patience. He watched the remaining 5 aliens, studying their patterns. The leader, the one with the blade, was still examining Alan and Peter while the others set up equipment around the clearing. Frank needed a distraction. He pulled a small emergency flare from his belt pack. It wasn't much, but it might be enough. He struck it and tossed it deep into the forest on the opposite side of the clearing. The bright red light caught the aliens' attention immediately. 2 of them moved toward it, weapons raised. Frank waited until they were out of sight, then made his move. He approached from behind the ship, keeping low. The alien guard never heard him coming. Frank leaped onto its back, driving his knife deep into the joint where the neck met the shoulder. The alien let out a strange, gurgling cry before falling. 2 down, 4 to go. The leader shouted something, and the remaining alien near the ship turned, spotting Frank. It raised its weapon. Frank rolled behind a tree as a blast of energy scorched the bark where he had been standing. Frank had one advantage: he knew these woods. The aliens didn't. He moved quickly between trees, circling around. The alien followed, firing its weapon. Trees sizzled and smoked where the energy blasts hit. When the alien passed a large boulder, Frank struck. He jumped from above, landing on the alien's shoulders. They crashed to the ground. The alien was stronger, but Frank was quicker. He grabbed the alien's arm and twisted until he heard a snap. The alien roared in pain, dropping its weapon. Frank picked it up and fired. The alien went still, 3 down. The 2 aliens who had gone to check the flare were coming back. Frank couldn't take on both at once. He retreated into the trees, moving quickly back toward the clearing and the captives. The leader was alone with Alan and Peter now. Perfect. Frank approached silently from behind. He could see the brothers' eyes widen when they spotted him, but they were smart enough not to react otherwise. The alien leader was focused on some kind of scanning device. Frank took aim with the alien weapon and fired, but the leader moved at the last second, faster than Frank expected. The blast hit the leader's shoulder instead of his back. The alien spun around with shocking speed. Human. The leader spoke in English, his voice deep and grating. You are either brave or stupid. Frank kept the weapon aimed at the alien. Let them go. The alien leader laughed, a harsh metallic sound. Your primitive species has spirit. I will enjoy watching it break. Without warning, the alien threw something at Frank. A small disc that expanded in mid-air. Frank tried to dodge, but the disc exploded into a net of glowing energy that wrapped around him. Pain shot through his body as he fell to the ground, the weapon slipping from his grasp. A worthy attempt, the alien said, approaching Frank. But our technology is beyond your understanding. Frank struggled against the energy net. I understand enough. The alien knelt beside him, studying him with large yellow eyes. You killed 3 of my scouts. That requires skill. What are you called? Frank Miller. I am Sub-Commander Next Tool of the Tarkarian Expeditionary Fleet. The alien touched a control on his wrist. Admiral Zarkesh will be interested in you. Just then, shots rang out from the forest edge. The 2 aliens returning from the flare distraction fell, green fluid spraying from their bodies. Human voices shouted commands. Flashlights cut through the darkness. Next Tool hissed and jumped back. This is not over, human. With surprising speed, he ran to the ship, slapped a control panel, and disappeared inside. Moments later, the craft lifted off, rising quickly into the night sky. The energy net around Frank faded. He got to his feet as soldiers in U.S. Army gear emerged from the trees. Sergeant Miller? A woman in a captain's uniform approached him. Captain Lydia Ward, 10th Mountain Division. Are you all right, sir? Frank nodded, moving to free Alan and Peter from their restraints. How did you find us? We've been tracking these alien landings for the past 12 hours, Captain Ward explained. When your students made it to the ranger station, they told us where to find you. Frank looked at her sharply. My students? I told them to stay hidden. Ward nodded. Only 2 made it, Lisa Jennings and Ryan Cooper. They said they couldn't just leave you. Frank felt relief wash over him. At least some of his students were safe. What's happening out there? The alien, Nextull, mentioned something called the Tarkarian Fleet. It's a global situation, sir. These ships appeared over every major city around the world simultaneously. They've established bases in strategic locations, including near military installations. Ward gestured for her team to secure the area. We should move. More of them could be coming. As they hiked back through the forest, Captain Ward explained what she knew. The aliens had attacked military bases worldwide, but mostly with precision, strikes that disabled rather than destroyed. They had jammed global communications but allowed limited local networks to function. They want us alive, she said grimly. At least for now. By dawn, they reached a military camp hidden in a valley. Helicopters and armed vehicles were camouflaged under trees. Soldiers moved with purpose, setting up equipment and defensive positions. Inside, the command tent, Frank found General Patricia Washington standing over a map table. She was a tall woman with gray-streaked hair and the hard eyes of someone who had seen too much combat. Sergeant Miller, she greeted him. I understand you've had close contact with the enemy. Frank gave her a detailed report of everything he had observed. The aliens' physical characteristics, their equipment, their apparent weaknesses in Earth's gravity. When he finished, General Washington studied him thoughtfully. You killed 3 of them with primitive weapons. That's information we need. A communications officer burst into the tent. General, We're receiving a worldwide broadcast from the alien fleet. They moved to a satellite feed on a nearby screen. An alien appeared, larger than Nexthull with elaborate armor and facial markings. His yellow eyes seemed to burn through the screen. People of Earth, the alien spoke in perfect English. I am Admiral Zarkesh, Supreme Commander of the Tarkarian Expeditionary Fleet. Your primitive defenses have been neutralized. Your leaders are in hiding. You stand no chance against us. The alien's face filled the screen. However, we have discovered that one of your kind has killed 3 of our elite warriors. Such barbarity cannot go unpunished. Deliver this human to us within 3 Earth days, or we will destroy one of your cities as an example. The screen showed Frank's face, a clear image taken from the alien ship's recording systems. This savage must face Tarkarian justice, Zarkesh continued. If you value your lives, you will comply. The transmission ended. Every eye in the tent turned to Frank. General Washington's expression was grave. It seems you've gotten the attention of the alien commander, Sergeant Miller. Frank stared at the blank screen. What happens now? Now, said General Washington, we need to figure out how to use this to our advantage, because I'm damn sure not handing you over to them. Frank nodded slowly. They're warriors. They value strength. Maybe that's something we can work with. A scientist stepped forward, a woman with dark-rimmed glasses and a serious expression. I'm Dr. Eleanor Reed, xenobiologist. Sergeant Miller, I'd like to discuss everything you observed about their physiology. If they're challenging you directly, there might be something important in their culture we can exploit. As the military leaders began planning, Frank couldn't shake the feeling that his encounter in the forest had changed everything. The alien general had chosen him as a target, and that might be the biggest mistake the invaders could make. 3 days passed in the hidden military base. Frank worked closely with Dr. Eleanor Reed, sharing everything he had observed about the Tarkarians. She took detailed notes, asking questions about their movements, reactions, and physical characteristics. Biology is fascinating, Dr. Reed said, reviewing her notes. Based on your observations, they're stronger than humans but struggle with our gravity. That suggests their homeworld has lighter gravity than Earth. Frank nodded. They moved fast, but not smooth, like they were fighting against their own. Wait, and their eyes, Dr. Reed continued. You said they were large and yellow? Yes. They reminded me of cat eyes, but bigger. Dr. Reed made another note. Large eyes often evolve in species from worlds with dimmer sunlight. They might have better vision than us in low light, but could be sensitive to bright light. A soldier entered the tent. General Washington wants to see you both immediately. They found the general in the communications center, surrounded by screens showing news feeds from around the world. The Tarkarians had established bases on every continent. Their ships hovered over major cities, a constant reminder of their presence. The deadline is in 6 hours, General Washington said grimly. Zarkesh will expect our answer. Frank studied the largest screen, which showed the massive alien flagship hanging above what used to be New York City. Have they attacked any civilian targets? Not yet, said Captain Ward, who stood nearby. Just military installations. They disabled our nuclear capabilities first, then took out communications satellites. Dr. Reed cleared her throat. General, I've been analyzing Sergeant Miller's observations along with intercepted Tarkarian communications. I believe I understand part of their culture now. Everyone turned to her. They're a warrior society with a strict code of honor, she explained. Combat prowess is their highest value. When Frank killed 3 of their scouts with primitive weapons, it wasn't just an inconvenience. It was an insult to their superiority. General Washington frowned. How does that help us? Dr. Reed looked at Frank. In many warrior cultures throughout human history, there's a tradition of resolving conflicts through champion combat. One fighter represents each side. Frank understood, immediately. You think we could challenge them? It's possible, Dr. Reed nodded. Their entire message focused on you personally. Not on capturing all humans responsible, just you. That suggests individual accountability matters to them. General Washington looked skeptical. You want us to suggest some kind of duel? Like a Wild West showdown with aliens? It might be our only option, Frank said quietly. They could destroy us if they wanted to. The fact that they haven't yet means something is holding them back. A communications officer called out, "General, we're receiving a transmission from the Tarkarian command ship. They're requesting to speak with you directly." General Washington straightened her uniform. "Put it through." The main screen flickered, showing Admiral Zarkesh's imposing figure. He wore ceremonial armor with intricate designs that seemed to indicate rank and accomplishments. "General Patricia Washington," the alien's voice rumbled. "Your time grows short. Will you deliver the criminal to us, or must we demonstrate our power?" General Washington stood tall. "Admiral Zarkesh, we have a different proposal. Our studies of your communications suggest your people value individual combat and honor. Is that correct?" The alien's eyes narrowed. "We are warriors, yes, what of it?" "Then I propose a challenge according to your own traditions. The human you seek, Frank Miller, will face your champion in combat. If he wins, your forces will leave Earth. If he loses, we will submit to your authority." A tense silence followed. The alien admiral seemed surprised by the proposal. "You understand our ways better than expected," Zarkesh finally said. "But do not think you can manipulate Tarkarian tradition to your advantage. Your primitive fighter cannot hope to defeat a Tarkarian warrior." "Then you have nothing to fear," General Washington replied. "Do you accept?" Zarkesh's face filled the screen. "I accept, but with one condition. I will face this human myself. No champion. If he has the courage to fight me, let him come aboard my ship in 2 Earth days." The transmission ended. Everyone in the room looked at Frank. "You don't have to do this," General Washington said quietly. Frank stared at the blank screen. "Yes, I do." Over the next 2 days, Frank prepared intensely. Gregor Phillips, his old Force Recon buddy who now worked in Special Operations, joined him to help with training. "You're insane, you know that," Gregor said as they sparred in the makeshift gym. "That alien is twice your size." Frank blocked Gregor's punch. "Size isn't everything. Dr. Reed's analysis gives us advantages." Major Samuel Chen, a military tactician, had created a training program based on Dr. Reed's findings about Tarkarian physiology. Frank practiced techniques targeting what they believed were Tarkarian vulnerabilities. Sofia Garcia, a defense engineer, worked around the clock to modify Frank's equipment. She designed lightweight armor that would protect vital areas while allowing maximum mobility. "The key is to use Earth's gravity to your advantage," Sofia explained, adjusting the armor's weight distribution. "They're stronger, but you can move more naturally in our environment." On the morning of the challenge, Frank sat alone in his tent. He thought about his students, about the world waiting for the outcome of this fight. A gentle knock interrupted his thoughts. "May I enter?" It was a voice he didn't recognize. A tall figure ducked through the tent flap, a Tarkarian but without the usual armor. Instead, this alien wore simple robes with diplomatic insignia. Frank jumped to his feet, reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. "Peace, human," the alien said, raising his hands. "I am Ambassador Kelvor. I come under diplomatic protection with your general's permission." Frank relaxed slightly. "What do you want?" "To help you," Kelvor said quietly. "Not all Tarkarians desire this conflict. Some of us believe peaceful contact would be more beneficial." Frank studied the alien's face. Unlike Zarkesh's fierce expression, Kelvor's seemed almost gentle. "Why would you help me? Admiral Zarkesh has led us into unnecessary wars before. His desire for combat glory overshadows wisdom." Kelvor produced a small device. "This contains recordings of the Admiral's previous combat challenges. Study his techniques. He favors attacks to his right and leaves his left side vulnerable for brief moments." Frank took the device cautiously. "Why should I trust you?" "You shouldn't," Kelvor said simply. "But consider this. If Zarkesh loses to a human, our military will be forced to respect your species. That opens the door for diplomacy rather than conquest." After the ambassador left, Frank reviewed the recordings with Dr. Reed and his team. They were invaluable, showing Zarkesh's fighting style in detail. As the time approached, Frank donned his specialized armor. It was lighter than standard combat gear, but reinforced at critical points. Sophia had included special inserts that would disperse the impact of Tarkarian strength. General Washington approached as he made final preparations. "The transport is ready. A small delegation will accompany you to the Tarkarian flagship." Frank nodded. "If this doesn't work—" "It will," she interrupted. "But if it doesn't, we have contingency plans. Just focus on the fight." As Frank boarded the transport helicopter, he looked back at the assembled soldiers. They saluted him as one. The weight of Earth's hopes rested on his shoulders as they lifted off toward the waiting alien vessel. The Tarkarian flagship was enormous. As the human transport approached, Frank could see it was at least 5 miles long, with strange angular sections that seemed to defy Earth architecture. The surface gleamed with a metallic blue sheen that shifted colors as they drew closer. Their helicopter was guided into a massive docking bay. Dozens of alien craft were lined up in precise rows. Tarkarian soldiers stood at attention, their armor glinting under the harsh lights. "Remember," Dr. Reed whispered as they prepared to exit, "they value ceremony and respect. Show no fear, but also no aggression until the combat begins." Frank nodded. He wore the special armor Sophia had designed, lightweight but reinforced at vital points. He carried no weapons. According to the agreement, both combatants would use only weapons provided at the arena. Colonel Diane Foster, the security chief for their small delegation, scanned the area. "I count at least 50 armed guards. Stay close together." They descended. From the helicopter, a group of Tarkarians approached, led by a figure in elaborate robes. Frank recognized Ambassador Kelvor. "Humans." Kelvor greeted them with a formal bow. "Welcome aboard the Dominance. The High Council awaits your champion." They were led through massive corridors. Tarkarian crew members stopped to stare at the humans. Some made gestures that Frank guessed were signs of disrespect. Others simply watched with curious yellow eyes. "They've never seen humans up close," Dr. Reed murmured. "For most of them, we're just primitives." The corridor opened into an enormous circular chamber. Thousands of Tarkarians filled tiered seating that rose high above the central floor. The noise was overwhelming, clicking and rumbling sounds that echoed throughout the space. In the center was a raised platform about 50 feet across. It was covered in a substance that looked like sand but shimmered with metallic specks. Ambassador Kelvor guided them to a small section near the platform. "Your delegation will remain here. The combat area is designed to replicate neutral conditions, not fully Earth gravity, not fully Tarkarian." Frank studied the arena. The modified gravity might affect his strategy. "Where is Admiral Zarkesh?" As if in answer, a thunderous sound rolled through the chamber. Tarkarians struck their armor in unison, creating a rhythmic pounding that vibrated the floor. A massive door opened on the far side of the arena. Admiral Zarkesh entered to deafening roars from his people. He stood nearly 8 feet tall, his ceremonial armor adorned with symbols of past victories. Even from a distance, Frank could see that the Admiral was physically impressive even by Tarkarian standards. A smaller Tarkarian, with ornate facial markings, stepped onto the platform. "I am High Priest Makrath," he announced in heavily accented English. "I will officiate this sacred combat according to the ancient laws of Tark." He raised his arms, and the chamber fell silent. "The human Frank Miller has been challenged by Admiral Zarkesh for the crime of killing Tarkarian warriors. By the laws of combat, if the human prevails, the Tarkarian fleet will depart Earth space. If Admiral Zarkesh prevails, humanity will submit to Tarkarian authority." The High Priest turned to Frank. "Human champion, approach the sacred ground." Dr. Reed squeezed Frank's arm. "Remember what we discussed. Use their gravity adjustment against them." Frank stepped onto the platform. Immediately he felt lighter, not quite like moon gravity from the videos he'd seen, but definitely less than Earth normal. He bounced slightly on his feet, testing it. From the other side, Admiral Zarkesh approached. Up close, he was even more intimidating, his yellow eyes fixed on Frank with cold hatred. High Priest Makrath moved between them. Combatants may choose from the sacred weapons. He gestured to a rack that rose from the platform floor, containing various bladed weapons. Zarkesh selected a weapon similar to a curved sword, but with serrated edges that gleamed under the lights. Frank studied the options, remembering Dr. Reed's analysis of Tarkarian physiology. He chose a pair of short blades similar to fighting knives but perfectly balanced. "The combat continues until surrender or death," Makrath declared. "May the strongest survive." He backed away from the center. A sound like a massive gong rang through the chamber. The combat had begun. Zarkesh moved immediately, faster than Frank expected despite what the ambassador's videos had shown. The alien covered the distance between them in 2 massive strides, swinging his blade in a vicious arc. Frank ducked under the attack, feeling the air disturbed by the blade passing inches above his head. The reduced gravity made his movements feel strange but also allowed him to dodge faster than normal. "Your speed surprises me, human," Zarkesh rumbled. "But it will not save you." The Admiral attacked again, this time with a series of precise strikes. Frank blocked one with his right blade and slipped past another, but the third caught him across the arm. The special armor prevented a deep cut, but pain flared along his bicep. Frank backed away, circling to his right. He needed to make the alien work in the unfamiliar gravity. Zarkesh pursued relentlessly, his movements powerful but slightly awkward. "You run like prey," the Admiral taunted. Frank stayed focused, remembering his training. After another series of attacks, he noticed what Dr. Reed had predicted. Zarkesh was breathing harder. The alien's massive chest expanded with each breath, a sign of exertion. Frank launched his own attack, aiming not for killing blows, but for the joints in the alien's armor. His first strike glanced off the chest plate, but the second found a gap at the shoulder. Green fluid seeped from the wound. Zarkesh roared, a sound that made Frank's ears ring. The Admiral's next attack was fueled by rage, a wide swing that left him briefly off balance. Frank seized the opportunity, ducking under the blade and driving one of his knives into the alien's thigh. Zarkesh staggered, clearly shocked that the human had wounded him twice. The crowd went silent. Frank backed away again, conserving energy. Minutes passed as they circled each other. Zarkesh was more cautious now, studying the human with newfound respect. "You were trained for this fight," the Admiral said, his voice low. "You know our weaknesses." Frank didn't respond. He watched, for the opening he needed, the left side vulnerability that Ambassador Kelvor had revealed. Zarkesh attacked again, a complex series of strikes that drove Frank backward. One caught him across the chest, tearing through the armor and drawing blood. Another sliced his leg. Pain flared, but Frank forced himself to focus. The fight continued for what felt like hours. Both combatants were wounded, bleeding, and tiring. The Tarkarians watched in stunned silence as their undefeated admiral failed to quickly dispatch the supposedly primitive human. Frank's right arm was nearly useless now, a deep cut making it difficult to hold his weapon. He transferred the blade to his left hand. Zarkesh was limping, green fluid staining the arena floor beneath him. "Enough games," the Admiral growled. He reached to his belt and pressed something. His armor hummed, panels shifting slightly. Power assistance, Frank realized. The Admiral was cheating. Zarkesh charged with renewed strength. Frank couldn't block the attack, it was too powerful. The blow knocked him across the platform. He rolled to his feet, tasting blood. The High Priest seemed about to intervene, but stopped at a gesture from Zarkesh. The combat would continue. Fair or not, Frank knew he had one chance. As Zarkesh approached for the finishing blow, Frank pretended to stumble. The Admiral raised his weapon, leaving his left side exposed for just a moment. It was all Frank needed. With his remaining strength, he drove both blades into the gap between chest and arm armor, twisting to maximize damage. Zarkesh froze, his weapon halting mid-swing. Green fluid poured from the wound. The massive alien dropped to one knee, then collapsed onto the platform. The arena fell completely silent. Thousands of Tarkarians stared in disbelief as their undefeated admiral lay bleeding on the platform. Frank stood over him, breathing heavily, his own wounds bleeding, but still on his feet. High Priest Macrath approached slowly, his expression unreadable. He knelt beside Zarkesh, checking the admiral's condition. After a moment, he stood and faced the crowd. "Admiral Zarkesh lives," he announced. The Tarkarians murmured in response. "But he is defeated. The human champion has won." Frank swayed on his feet, exhaustion and blood loss taking their toll. Dr. Reed and Colonel Foster rushed to the platform to support him. "Did we just win?" Frank asked through cracked lips. "Yes," Dr. Reed whispered. "You did it, Frank." Medical teams from both species moved onto the platform. Tarkarian medics carefully lifted their admiral while Dr. Nathan Brooks, who had accompanied the human delegation, began treating Frank's wounds. Multiple lacerations, possible internal bleeding. Dr. Brooks said grimly, "We need to get him back to Earth immediately." A deep voice interrupted them. "The human will receive our medical care first." Fleet Commander Vex Kor, Zarkesh's second-in-command, stood nearby. Unlike the Admiral's ornate armor, Vex Kor wore a simpler, functional uniform that indicated his focus on military efficiency rather than ceremony. Colonel Foster stepped between them. "With respect, Commander, we'd prefer to treat him ourselves." "It was not a request," Vex Kor replied. "Your champion has earned the right to our best care. It is our way." Before anyone could argue further, Tarkarian medical officers arrived. With advanced equipment, they used devices that sealed Frank's wounds without stitches and administered treatments that immediately eased his pain. Ambassador Kelvor joined them, addressing the human delegation. "The High Council has convened to discuss the outcome. You will be summoned when they reach a decision." 4 hours later, Frank sat in a recovery chamber. His wounds were nearly healed. The Tarkarian medical technology was far beyond human capabilities. Dr. Reed and General Washington, who had arrived via shuttle after the combat, waited with him. "What happens now?" Frank asked. General Washington's expression was cautious. "According to their laws, they should leave Earth, but laws can be reinterpreted." "I don't think they'll break their word," Dr. Reed said. "From everything we've learned, honor is central to their culture. Breaking a sacred combat agreement would shame their entire species." A chime sounded, and Ambassador Kelvor entered. "The Council requests your presence." They were led to an imposing chamber where 7 Tarkarians sat on raised seats. Fleet Commander Vex Kor stood before them. To everyone's surprise, Admiral Zarkesh was also present, supported by medical devices but conscious and alert. High Priest Macrath, who appeared to be leading the council, spoke first. "The sacred combat has been completed. The human champion prevailed. By our ancient laws, the Tarkarian fleet must withdraw from Earth space." Vex Kor stepped forward. "High Council, I request permission to speak." "Granted, Fleet Commander." The combat was fought with honor by both sides. The human warrior proved his species is not as primitive as we believed. Vex Kor turned to look at Frank. "I propose an alternative to simple withdrawal." General Washington tensed. "We expect your people to honor the original agreement, and we shall," Vex Kor assured her. "But perhaps there is a better path forward." To everyone's surprise, Admiral Zarkesh raised his hand. "I wish to address the human warrior directly." The council members murmured among themselves, then nodded their approval. Zarkesh's voice was weaker than before but still carried authority. "Frank Miller, you fought with skill and honor. You defeated me fairly despite my—" He paused. "Advantage." Frank realized the Admiral was acknowledging his use of power assistance, his cheating, without directly admitting it before his people. "In all my years, I have never faced a warrior like you," Zarkesh continued. "Your species has earned the right not just to be left alone but to be respected." Macrath leaned forward. "We came to your world seeking resources and new territory. We believed humans were primitive creatures unworthy of consideration. We were wrong. Ambassador Kelvor stepped forward. The High Council proposes a new arrangement. We will withdraw our military forces as agreed, but we wish to establish diplomatic relations with Earth. We offer technology, knowledge, and alliance. General Washington looked skeptical. Why the sudden change of heart? Not sudden, Zarkesh said. This was always a possibility. The Tarkarian way is to test potential allies through conflict. Only those who prove their strength are worthy of partnership, Dr. Reed whispered to Frank. It makes sense. A warrior culture would value strength above all. By defeating their greatest champion, you proved humanity deserves respect. President Laura Winters, who had arrived on a later shuttle, joined the conversation. We are willing to discuss peaceful relations, but trust must be earned after an attempted invasion. Agreed, said Vexcor. We will begin by sharing medical technology as a gesture of good faith. Over the next 3 days, agreements were drafted. The Tarkarian ships moved away from Earth's cities, maintaining only a diplomatic vessel in orbit. Teams of scientists from both species began cautious exchanges of knowledge. Frank was hailed as a hero when he returned to Earth. News of his victory had spread worldwide. People celebrated in the streets as the massive alien ships departed from Earth's skies. 1 month later, Frank stood in a newly established interspecies facility in Geneva. He had declined most public appearances, preferring to work behind the scenes helping humans understand Tarkarian combat techniques and culture. A familiar voice spoke behind him. Human. Frank turned to see Admiral Zarkesh, now fully recovered and wearing diplomatic attire rather than battle armor. Admiral, Frank nodded. Good to see you on your feet. And you as well. The Tarkarian approached, towering over Frank, but with none of his previous hostility. I have been named ambassador to Earth. My first official act is to invite you to visit our homeworld. Frank raised an eyebrow. Me? Why? Because you are the first human many Tarkarians will meet. They should meet one who embodies your species' best qualities. Zarkesh made a gesture of respect. And because I believe we have much to learn from each other. Frank considered the offer, then nodded. I'd like that. 2 weeks later, Frank boarded the diplomatic vessel bound for Tarkaria. As Earth grew, smaller in the viewport, Admiral Zarkesh joined him. It looks peaceful from here, the Admiral commented. Most things do from a distance, Frank replied. Zarkesh made a sound that Frank now recognized as Tarkarian laughter. I chose the wrong human to fight, he said, but perhaps the right one to build peace. As the ship accelerated toward the stars, Frank smiled. The alien general had indeed chosen the wrong human to fight. But maybe that mistake would lead to something better for both their worlds.